Put down your baby and pick up a beer. Dad Jokes is back with a brand new episode. I'm Jerry, joined here by Inspector Banks, who is on the episode with me. And today we're going to talk about some things to do with our childhood and how that affects us as parents. But Brandon, before we get into that, why don't you hit with the dad joke?
Inspector Banks. You've been going with that all day, haven't you?
Yes. And for those of you who don't know, Brandon tends to have facial hair, but he's trimmed the mustache up just a little bit more than normal.
I took the whole beard off.
And he kind of looks like the inspector from Pink Panther. So if you've never looked up,
it's a little aggressive.
Inspector Caruso, I think's his name. If you want to look it up at home, that's Brandon's look right now.
You saying I have a pencil mustache, Jerry?
I'm saying you have a pencil mustache right now. That's exactly what
thanks,
you have.
I appreciate it. Jerry, are you ready for these jokes?
I'm ready for these jokes.
Well, speaking of inspectors, my joke is about an agent, a secret agent.
Oh, okay.
Why doesn't James Bond fart in bed?
I want to say something about 007, but I don't know.
Because it would blow his cover.
Nice. I like it. All right, that's okay. It's 007.
He's intimidated. He's intimidated by that joke.
You know what? Speaking of, I don't know why this just popped in my head, but you talk about James Bond, and I instantly think of N64 GoldenEye. You know, it's just a great game.
That's a top 3 greatest game ever created.
Right, exactly. For any of you guys,
and it probably ain't 3, and it probably ain't 2. From just a nostalgia, childhood sleepovers.
For anyone that's around our age, that's a video game nerd or anything like that, I think you'd probably agree with this. GoldenEye.
You don't even have to be a nerd.
That's true.
You just have to have like 2 other friends, 3 other friends.
It was great. That was a great game. There's a lot of good games, but GoldenEye's got to be, like you said, top 3 for a lot of people, at least top 5. Right. But it's great. The
ultimate No, it's not the game where you're like, it's the. I think about that game and I think about like 70 different sleepovers I had between the age of, I don't know, 8 and 14. I'm probably off on my years.
It was like Halo before Halo came out.
Yeah.
That's what it was. So I like that. But Brandon, before we get into today's episode, what's been going on at the Banks household?
So my parents are out of town, and they're gone for about 2.5 weeks. So Bryce has basically had time split between myself and his mom, and so we're getting a lot more daytime Bryce than we normally do. And then my mother-in-law, Kelsey's mom, is in town for the next few days, and she's also helping us out some next week as well. So he's getting some key action. But we're able to experience Bryce a little bit more during the week than we have been. So that's been fun. As a part of that, you guys may remember that a few weeks ago, basically when Bryce turned 9 months, we had to go ahead to get an allergy panel done for him, and we took him in. They had a couple different tests that the doctor wanted, and then the allergy draw, and the lovely people at the diagnostic center. It was an extremely traumatic experience for Bryce, his mom, and I might admit that I didn't like it as well. And you think that you're done, you think you're all good, and then dad gets a call that says, "Hey, we didn't get enough blood." And so you kind of, I might have had some choice words to say under my breath, and then we had to go back out. This is about a month later because we contemplated not doing it because it wasn't great. So we take them back in to get the blood drawn again for the allergy panel because they didn't get enough, and we run into a similar issue.
Oh no!
Like after they get done with the first arm, and I looked at the person doing it and I said, "Hey, is that enough? Because we're not doing this again." And they brought in someone to get a second opinion.
Oh, no.
They basically were going to let us walk if I hadn't said anything, and they didn't have enough, and so they got his other arm. They got 2 full vials, so he had to go through it twice that time but we weren't going back. So luckily they did what they had to do. It was make sure, for those out there, learn from our horror and just make sure that you ask that they triple, quadruple check that they have enough to run. They were basically like, well, we think we have enough, but we won't really know until like we send it out with this amount, and if it's not enough, then we'll have to come back, which they didn't even tell us the first time we were out there. But so I was like, no, how about we just make sure we have enough since we're here and he's already upset. So learn from our mistake, advocate for your child. That way you don't put them in that situation multiple times. So that was that. And I know we talked about previously kind of our bedtime routine, things like that. We have in the last week, we were waiting until we spent more time in the day so we can establish a very clear schedule. We have fully transitioned Bryce to all naps, all night sleep. Everything is in his room, in his nursery, in his crib. Prior to that, he was sleeping like contactless, but sleeping in our room, in his it's like a pack and play in our room. But he is fully in his crib.
Do you
now.
feel like a brand new man?
It is both good and bad. If we were to record it yesterday, and it was my fault we didn't, I would have said this has been going pretty well overall. Tonight, he was pretty rough on his mom. So it's he kind of has figured out that he can make up noise and he'll sit up in his crib and just like cry, and then she'll come in or I'll come in. And what we're trying to focus on right now, this is a tough part, but we're trying to focus on not picking him up, basically cradling him to sleep. He needs to know how to fall asleep on his own. It'll be better in the long run, but we're in a little bit of it's tough when he doesn't want to go to sleep or he isn't completely sleepy. So it's great because we watched TV in our room for the first time. I know you know nothing about what that's like, Jerry.
I don't.
Jerry has no TV in his room.
They say if you want a healthy marriage, get a twin-size bed and have no TV. I have a king-size bed but no TV, so I'm doing one of the two.
So we got a queen-size bed, and I bought a new TV a couple years ago, and I put my main living room TV, which was pretty decent, in my bedroom. So I basically got IMAX in my bedroom for the size of the room. But I'll put it like this. I feel like I'm talking a ton to start this episode. But that TV, like, it'd been so long since we turned it on. It wasn't even plugged in, and I can't tell you the last time it was plugged in.
You probably mad, like, what's wrong with this TV?
Dude, I grabbed the remote. I'm hitting the power button. I'm like, oh, this thing ain't even. We got our house painted like 3-4 months ago, and I unplugged it, and it hasn't been plugged in since. So that tells you how much TV we've been watching as a household. But that was that's a long-winded version. But that was our week, Jerry. What you guys been up to?
We've been up to a decent amount too. Peyton said Dada. We talked about that in the last episode. She's also kind of said Bubba since then.
Still mad. I'm still mad
here's
about
what's
that.
crazy. So Macy was kind of upset, kind of like you were, because she hadn't said Mama. And yesterday we went on the boat with my mom and my sister, and we were hanging out. And my mom goes, "Oh, did you hear Peyton just said Mama?" And I'm like, "No, she didn't." You know, it was one of those grandma moments. I just looked at her and I was like, she did not say Mama. Macy didn't hear. Nobody heard it, but my mom's like, no, she said it. And we're like, okay. So we got home that night, and I'll get into this in a minute, but Peyton was kind of a whole thing yesterday. She was very dramatic yesterday. So we get home, we're trying to get some stuff done. We put her in an activity center, and she's kind of crying, fussing, but not like completely crying, just kind of making noise. And then she kind of just goes, Mama. And I kind of looked over. Macy looks at me. She goes, "Did you hear that?" I said, "Yeah, I heard it." So she said "Mama" too. So that was kind of cool. That's the only time she said it that we both heard. She didn't. That was just yesterday, but she didn't say it today. Grandma said she was trying to get her to say it all day, and she didn't. But it was kind of funny. So she said Mama now and Dada and kind of Bubba. It's kind of like it's more like Bubba, but it's I don't know. I don't know if I count that or not. But
I'm so annoyed by this because Bryce can say 24 letters in the
none of them are D
or English language, but none of them are D. Actually, this morning he woke up. He looked at me. I'm making that joke, but this morning, like first thing he did when he woke up, and I Kelsey brought him into bed with me for like the last 30 minutes of his night. He looks up at me and he says, "Duh," and doesn't do anything else. And I spent the first 10 minutes of my morning trying to get him to do something else. So I could have been dreaming that as well. I've never heard.
It is funny because you think you hear it sometimes. You're like, did I hear that wrong? But it is. It is
I was
kind of
half
cool.
asleep too, so probably
Peyton like gets a letter and she gets obsessed with it for a while. So if it's the D's, like today she was saying "dada" a ton, more than she ever has. Like that's all she'd say all day. Apparently that's what my in-laws said, and that's kind of what when I got home even she was just dad. So that was great. But she'll get on the B's and it'll be Baba, and then sometimes it'll be something I can't even understand. But she like kind of repeats herself. But anyways,
maybe I need to have Bryce watch Bluey. Maybe that's what it is.
There it is. It's Bluey, which, by the way, season 3 is coming out. I sent you that. It's great. I'm excited for it. A lot of people, even one of our former guests, Nick Schumer, posted something about that because he's such a fan. So great job, Nick, out there being a Bluey fan like we are in our family.
We're a Miss Rachel fan in this household.
Lame. Loser show.
And tab time.
So, anyways, this week, Peyton, she's been not quite crawling yet, but she's doing this thing, and I don't know if Bryce ever did this. She, like, is bear crawling, kind of. She, like, gets on her hands and then gets on her feet and kind of, like, stands in, like, the tall plank type position. And, yeah, I don't know what that's about. But what's kind of cool is to come from that is she's starting to, like, brace herself and stand up on things, kind of like where she'll lean on like the couch or she'll lean on your legs and kind of push herself up to where she's kind of standing with support. But she still hasn't quite figured out the crawling thing, although she can get anywhere she wants. She can spin, inchworm, roll. I mean, she's getting anywhere she wants, but the crawling act itself has not come to fruition yet. But she's got to be dang close because she can do everything else. So I'm waiting any day now.
You know how people told me, be careful what you wish for?
Yeah.
And I was like, nope, I want him moving everywhere. That kid gets into everything.
Oh, yeah.
It is nuts. So,
yeah.
It's fun.
It's just, at this point in time, I don't even know. It's more like I feel bad for her because I feel like she's frustrated sometimes. But I'm sure once it happens, I'll be like, okay, you can stop that now. You did it once. But we'll see. So she's there. She's also in the middle of a leap because why not, Brandon? She's in the middle of a leap, and she's been kind of cranky lately. She's been really happy and good, but then she'll just get in these moods where she's just cranky. And yesterday was one of the crankiest days she's had in a long, long time, at least in the morning. It was really bad in the morning for about 3 hours or so. We ended up going to my mom's house to go on the boat, and she was pretty good on the boat. She didn't love the life jacket, but it was her first time on the boat, which was also kind of fun. We went swimming. She got to hang out. She got to hang out with her cousin, her aunts, her grandparents. That was a lot of fun. But then she was cranky again at night. And then last night she woke up quite a few times, I think 3 or 4 times. And so mom and dad are tired today. I was more tired today than I've been in a long time. I don't know if it's the leap. I don't know if she's finally getting some teeth to pop through. I don't know if it was something she ate. I don't know what it was, Brandon, but she's been a little bit cranky. I mean, she's almost 8 months. She's a week away from 8 months, and she still has no teeth. So they got to be coming soon. I'm guessing they're coming soon.
I would imagine that they are. And it's just, this is what's cool about the podcast. I mean, like, we each have kids, like, kind of developing at different times. Like, she's saying words Bryce can't say. She started, like, rolling over well before Bryce did it at that stage. But Bryce randomly had, like, he's working on teeth 7 and 8 right now. Like, it's just, and that just goes to show you, like, every kid is different. Things are going to happen differently. You just got to be prepared for everything.
Oh, it is. They do. I mean,
sleep.
Her little cousin's 3 months younger than her, and he's bigger. We were hanging out, and he's so much bigger than her. It's hilarious. He's starting to really get in that stage where he's developing kind of a look, and he's super cute right now. So it's been a busy week. We also, mom and dad, so Macy and I, we got to go out to a country concert on Friday night, and it was great. Some Thomas Rhett, any Thomas Rhett friends out there? A lot of fun, and got to spend some time together with some friends, and grandma and aunt got to watch her, so that was fun. And good for us, but also that her Aunt Molly and her grandma and grandpa got to spend some extra time with her kind of near bedtime, so that was fun for them too. So it was a busy week, and a lot going on in kind of the household. We got a lot of milestones coming up soon. But I'm hoping tonight's a better night of sleep, Brandon. That's kind of where I'm at. I'm hoping tonight's a good night.
I'm hoping that for you as well. There's nothing quite like not having a good night's sleep with a kid. You're a little sluggish the next day, but you learn to get used to it. Even though I feel like I still have not caught up on sleep. Like I'll have a good night's sleep, and it really does nothing for me.
Yeah, you just never catch up. But the good thing for her is that now when she wakes up, it's pretty easy to get her to go back down. It's so frequent, and by the time you get up, we walk upstairs, you spend a few minutes with her, even if she goes down without feeding her, and then you got to walk back downstairs and fall back asleep. So you're just 20 minutes or so, but it messed up your sleep cycle, and it's just that act. So the good thing is, like I said, fortunately, she has been pretty good at going back down once she wakes up. But we probably need to do a better job of not feeding her throughout the night, but maybe once, because I think sometimes we're just like, oh, we'll just feed her because it'll go back to bed, and that's probably a bad habit we're having.
Yeah, we've been weaning Bryce. I should have brought this up probably, but we've been weaning him off of his nighttime bottle. So at one point, I mean, it was just a normal bottle, like every other feeding. We're down to 2.5 ounces that he gets in the middle of the night, and pretty soon it's gonna go away.
Yeah, it's probably because right now she typically will eat twice throughout the night. Sometimes it's only once. But like last night, she woke up the first time. I put her back down. We don't pick her up. I just kind of patted her butt for like 30 seconds and she went back to sleep, right? Easy. But then she woke up at like 2 o'clock and at like 4 or 5 o'clock. And I think Macy fed her both those times because I think it was one of those things. It's just like, well, we might as well just do it. But I think we need to cut back to at least once and then go from there. Probably a good idea.
They'll surprise you. When we did that with Bryce, we really didn't notice a difference from a like him waking up perspective. Like he still like it still got him through the night is what I'm trying to say.
No, that makes sense.
By just going on one.
So Brandon, one thing we haven't talked about yet is some new baby gear, and I know you got some to talk about. I got a couple pieces too that I'm actually pretty excited about.
So in transitioning Bryce to his room, one thing, and I've mentioned it in the past, but it bears repeating again, is the mattress that we use. For us, and as you'll see if you are listening back to the podcast or you remember back, a lot of stuff we have done, and this is something I was kind of against in the beginning because I wanted to, Jerry's making a little bougie face at me, and that's exactly where I was going. It ends up being peace of mind type thing, but I'm not going to lie. So he's sleeping on his stomach now. Like he rolls himself over to his stomach and is basically face first into his mattress. Like if we're looking at it from the Nanit perspective, it literally looks like he's face first in his mattress. And so if we walked up to him, you see his nose is slightly exposed, but it's the peace of mind that the Newton mattress is what I'm talking about, and it's completely breathable. That's what they market it as. And for me, I've kind of exposed myself as I've had anxiety throughout his entire life, and that's not something I'm used to. And that him being face first in that mattress is something that I feel a lot more comfortable with. We spent a pretty penny on it, but it's worth it for my peace of mind at this point. So it's that. And then the other real quick thing, he's been going on a few more walks lately. It's really hot here in Michigan right now. So it's called a T-Dome stroller fan. It's just a little mini fan that wraps around the front of your stroller. And it's something that can keep your kid cool while you go on walks.
Yeah, we have one of those. They're definitely great. And honestly, I know anyone I know with kids seems to have one, so they're great if you're in any kind of hot weather. A couple pieces of baby gear that we've kind of have purchased recently, Brandon, is we're in this stage, and Peyton's really small, so she's still got a while, but we wanted to start thinking about convertible car seats. And recently, Prime Day happened, and this is probably a little late to talk about this, but Prime Day happened, and they have a lot of sales on baby stuff. And one of the things they had a sale on was the Graco Extend-A-Fit car seat. It was quite a bit on sale, so we got that kind of as our secondary car seat for grandma and grandpa, between both grandparents, actually, that we're going to probably try to flip between those for when they're watching the kids. But that was a great deal. And then actually also the Nuna Reva went on sale because Nordstrom has their anniversary sale every July, and they sell Nuna products, and they give a discount on those products. Not always the same ones, but some of those Nuna products every single anniversary sale. I think they also sell Baby Vista stuff too, Brandon. And they do their anniversary sale. It's kind of a big deal. So Macy went out and we got that car seat, which is also price protected. So Nuna has to authorize anything to be discounted. So it's not very often that it happens. But we were able to get that discounted pretty heavily during kind of the same period of time. So now we have 2 car seats that you're not using yet, but we're going to have one for kind of us and then one for kind of the grandparents. But those are some dates to keep in mind. Prime Day, great time to buy some baby gear stuff. And then if you want to buy any of the stuff that Nordstrom sells, their anniversary sales always in July. They kind of have an early release for people that are like card members and stuff, which we're not, and then they have it open to the public, which is like a few days later. So that's a couple pieces.
The grandparents are gonna get the Nuna, and you guys are gonna get the Graco.
No.
Oh, that's not how that works.
That's not how that happens. They're actually both very, very highly rated for safety, which is the most important thing. The Nuna is definitely a little bit more bougie, so that's gonna go in Mom's car. Dad's gonna get none of it because I never have a car. I drive a car for work, and I never have my car. People always have it, so it's so hard for me to have a car seat in my car because people are always taking my vehicle, and it's just I'm gonna
leave that point alone. I think my point was made.
Yeah, it was. I get it. But there's also another piece of baby gear that you might actually enjoy, Brandon. I did not know about this, so shout out to my sister Kirsten. I was at her house yesterday because we were at her house, which she's the one who lives right by the lake when we go on the boat. And she was doing the kind system like we were for feedings for their new baby, Luca, which is the cousin I was talking about that's bigger than Peyton already.
That's one of my favorite baby names, for the record. Like, I wouldn't name my kid that, but I like it when I see it.
Yeah, he's so chunky. He's cute. But for Luca, they were doing the kind system kind of like we were, but then my sister's a little bit more environmentally conscious than I probably am, and she started saying I was feeling bad about all the bags we were going through. So she found something that I had never heard of, and it's on Amazon, and it's called the Boon system. So it's BOON, and they're reusable silicone pouches that fit into kind of like a bottle nipple. So basically, you're not throwing away bags. You're reusing these silicone bags, and you can wash them out and then just keep pumping into them. So it's very environmentally conscious. It's kind of cool. She ordered on Amazon. She hasn't gotten them yet, but I'm going to ask her how they are. And it's for someone who is got a green thumb or really cares about the environment. Not that people don't, but if that's kind of big for you, that might be something to look into.
If they have a green thumb.
I mean, that's fun playing. I guess that's probably the wrong saying there. You can tell I'm not the environmental guy. My brother is. I'm not. I don't know. I'm just trying to say, like, if you're environmentally conscious. Me, I'm whatever's
easy. If
easy,
you're good at planting lilies in your backyard, this is the bottle for you.
It kind of correlates. You figure the people that have gardens usually are the ones that also want to save the environment. That's probably somehow true. I don't know. Hey,
I'm with you.
We sell electric cars. We're saving the environment too. It's okay.
There we go.
So, anyways, I thought that was cool, Brandon. I don't know if that's something that you guys would look at for the next baby, but I'd never heard of it. It's on Amazon. It's not that expensive. BOON is, like I said, but it's got 14,429 reviews currently, so it's not like it's new or people haven't used it before. So those are my pieces of baby gear, Brandon. He's still over there laughing at me.
Oh man, that was. I hope everybody at home or in your car thought that was as funny as I did, because you just rolling with it. And after I have a second, I was like, I'm just gonna let him go. If you got a green thumb, this is the bottle for you. You need to email them and say, I got your new ad idea.
Inspector Banks sought me out, and he didn't let me get away with it. He found the issues with my joke. So Brandon, what about things your wife said? Do you have one of those? Because I got one of those.
Oh, I don't have anything there this week. It's been a good week though.
I had one.
With us being able to I keep cutting you off, but with us being able to throw Bryce into his room, we've been able to watch shows, like I said, and at bedtime we've been able to cuddle a little bit. It's been fun.
There you go. Hopefully you're watching Bluey, getting caught up before season 3.
No.
But I had kind of a things your wife said moment, and this reminded me kind of some of the stories you've had in the past. I'm literally sitting, I think, on the couch, getting some stuff together, and Macy's like, oh, I'm going to change Peyton really quick. And she's changing Peyton, and I don't know why wives do this. I think all wives probably do this, but she's trying to describe to me what's going on, right? And I'm like, I don't care. Like, I don't want to hear about it. Like, I change her enough, I know what's going on, right?
This is starting off great.
Right. So I'm like, I don't care. So then next thing I know, I turn around and she's got a diaper in her hand, and she literally looks at me and goes, look at this poop. That's like, no,
oh my goodness.
No, I don't want to look at that. That is not, I just changed her a couple of hours ago. I don't need to see it when I'm not doing it. And I literally told her, I was like, no, put that away. But that's apparently where we're at, where we're not only changing and talking about it, but we're taking the diaper physically and trying to show me what is going on. Meanwhile, Peyton's probably crying on the floor naked because mom wants to show me.
That's right up there with the. That's right up there with the. Oh my God, this is horrible. Come smell this.
Yes, exactly. Come see and smell the horror.
I'm gonna take your word for it.
So that was just the other day. But yeah. Well, Peyton's having big girl poops. We'll just leave it at that. So, but she did. This is something actually kind of maybe like a baby fact, but something that you might want to keep in mind. We had never run into this, but she was kind of constipated for a few days, and you could tell she was in pain. And one thing they say that can help with that is actually keeping them hydrated. So she doesn't drink a ton of water, but we were giving her some more water and obviously some fruit juices and things like that, and moving her legs more to try to help. Those are all things you can do to help constipation. But it was kind of tough because you could tell she was like in pain, and it's like, what can you really do, as a parent? But those are a few things that we looked up that you can do to help with some mild constipation.
So along those lines, to a degree, talking about poop, I do have to tell this short story. And I know we're running over on time. But so Bryce right now, I didn't bring this up, I forgot, but he has we noticed like on the underneath of his, like basically his penis, like the shaft portion, he has like a little sore. So he ended up, he was at the doctor anyway. We brought that up. They gave him some cream. It might be could literally be like a yeast infection. They don't know. The kids never had diaper rash or anything like that, but we see, like we started to see a rash around like just that area in general. So it's been something we noticed has been bothering him a little bit. Like every time you take his diaper off, he was never really interested in his area down there, but now he grabs it like every time. And it's gotten better. But I over the weekend I was changing his diaper, and there was poop in the diaper, and there happened to be poop on his penis. And the first thing he does, this is a big one, first thing he does is grab his Johnson. And he immediately takes it. There's poop on his hands. Now I'm like scrambling. Like, I got one hand on his arm. Well, he reaches down with the other arm and immediately just puts it on his face. So now the kid has poop on his face. Poop. Now his hands are going everywhere. I'm losing it. Like it's going everywhere. Kelsey comes downstairs. We just get him all out of his clothes, and they go take a joint shower together. Actually,
yeah.
While
you gotta just
like messing around with.
You just gotta rinse him off. Sometimes it's a losing battle.
That's the story you guys didn't need to hear, but I needed to get it off my chest.
I like it.
I like dramatic.
It. Well, Brandon, I think it's about time that we get into today's topic. And today's topic is kind of a fun one, kind of an interesting one, but it's how does your childhood affect your parenting? And there's a lot of research out there, there's studies out there, there's psychologists out there that all kind of talk about the fact that your childhood most definitely, and it makes sense, will affect your style of parenting. Whether you had a great childhood, a bad childhood, somewhere in between, there's going to be things that you learned that you liked or didn't like, and it's going to affect how you parent. And I think we both can speak on that. We both had different childhoods, but I would say mostly positive childhoods, and it has affected us probably as dads thus far. And I'll kind of let you lead, but, kind of some experiences that you've had and you've already noticed from your childhood that are kind of playing part today in your life.
Yeah, and one thing, I was looking at an article on Psychology Today, and it was talking about like different mindsets that people have, and I'm actually going to switch it up a little bit and just read them off really quick, because I think as we kind of talk about our individual childhoods, both good and bad, these may cause you guys who are listening to think. So, number one, my kids will have it better than me. And I'm not going to give a bunch of description behind it. These are kind of self-explanatory. But so that's number one, my kids will have it better than me. Two, I will never do that to my kids. Three, if it was good enough for me, it's good enough for them. I'll probably fall into that a little bit. Four, help. My parent is coming out of my mouth. More or less thinking like, hey, I sound just like my dad when I say certain things. Five, my kids will pursue the dreams I never got to fulfill. And then six, bad things happen to me, I would never let them happen to my kids. And then, as I like kind of look at that as like the parameters, it kind of caused me to just think like, how was my childhood? What sticks out to me, and how I grew up. One, for me personally, I grew up very, very strict. And from a perspective, like I couldn't I always use this as an example, but like, Hey Arnold, I couldn't watch that as a kid. Rugrats, things like that. My parents were very intentional with what television was going on in the home. From a dating perspective, what is that? I wasn't dating anybody or that they knew about.
I was going to say, you weren't, or they didn't think you were.
Yeah. Things like sleepovers, things like that, music, even what school I went to, and like who I surrounded myself with. And I'm saying this, I don't want it to come across like I'm complaining. There are a lot of that I respect, and I'm going to incorporate into how we raise Bryce. So let's use like sleepovers as an example. And this is something where parents go kind of back and forth. There is, in my opinion, a lot of weird things that happen in people's homes, and you don't necessarily know what's going on in someone else's house that's not yours. I hated it as a kid, like not being able to, a kid to have a sleepover. My parents would not let me go. Like they had to know the parents, know them well, have years of like kind of background with them. And even then it was like pulling teeth for me to be able to spend a night at anyone's house in a sleepover setting, or even just one-on-one sleeping over. And as a kid, I hated it. I thought that it was unfair. I was the only person who had to abide by these rules, yada, yada. But from a parental standpoint, I completely agree. And that's something that I think I'm going to take from my childhood, and ultimately that's a rule that Kelsey and I have already discussed we're going to have for Bryce. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I think I have a kind of a unique perspective, but I think it's probably similar to a lot of our listeners. I grew up in a divorced family. My parents got divorced when I was very small. By the time I was 3, both of them were married by the time I was 6. So I grew up with basically two families or two sides. I also have 6 siblings. So I have a big family, 5 older sisters, 1 little brother. But my dad and my mom were similar in some things, but very different in some things. My dad was very strict, kind of similar to your parents, and he was old school. He's a military guy, and it was yes sir, no ma'am. You gotta do things the proper way, and if you didn't, you knew. He's the dad that would count to 3, and you never let him get to 3. That was my dad.
It's funny how effective that is.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know what happens when he gets to 3, and I don't want to find out. And my mom, she was a little bit different. She wasn't the most lenient. She was strict on some things, but she was a lot more. She's more affectionate, more energetic, more kind of loving, and wants to show her affection outwardly, whereas my dad was more reserved. And so their parenting style sometimes conflicted, but they also didn't get along. So they didn't co-parent together. They had like my dad's rules were my dad's rules when I was at my dad's house. My mom's rules were my mom's rules when I was at my mom's house, which also made it tough because when you're a kid, it's like, well, I'm allowed to do this here. Why am I not allowed to do it there? And so that in itself has kind of affected me as a parent, because I want to make sure that my kids know that me and Macy are always on the same page, and that we are a team, and that we love each other, and that we're there to help make their lives better. But we're the parents. We set the rules, because that was something as a kid that was really tough for me, because my parents weren't ever on the same page, and they didn't get along. So the first relationships I saw were very negative ones, and so that made me insecure when I was younger. Like I wasn't good with like tight relationships with other people because I was like afraid of them, if you will. So that's something that I definitely want to make sure that my kids don't see that kind of negative type of stuff, as far as like in the home, and that they can kind of understand what the rules are and what they should follow. Because if you're not on the same page, it can cause problems. Because moms and dads can disagree. I mean, that is normal. Yeah. So it's making sure, like you said, having the conversations ahead of time or in private, or if you do disagree, don't do it in front of them. You do it kind of behind the scenes. And I think that's something I will try to do, because I'm sure we're going to disagree on things, but I don't want to do it in front of them and confuse them, or even, make them think, oh, mom's mean here or dad's mean here.
Yeah, and it's that's something that I think we both strive to do. One thing that's important, and if you're listening to this podcast, it may be too late, but those are conversations that Kelsey and I had before we got married, before we discussed having kids, because that's the type of thing that is just super important from a parenting standpoint. You got to make sure that your ideology matches with your partner's, because a lot of that stuff can get nipped in the bud before that. If we don't agree on certain things, we're not having kids together, and it's almost as simple as that. Another thing that kind of stuck with me that I know would differ significantly from how I grew up. I got this labeled in my notes as whoopings for people who are at home listening. And it's discipline, but specifically, I'm not talking spankings. I'm not talking about a pat on the butt. I'm talking about, hey, go in there and grab my belt. So you walk into your dad's closet, you pulling his belt off of the rack, you testing the belts out to try to get the one that ain't that thick, but they all kind of a little bit too thick, and you got it coming. And that's something that I actually, there is a part of me that thinks that it could be effective discipline. So I'm not completely turned off to it from a, like, I'm not necessarily going to shun the next person who's doing it or think that they're doing something wrong. For me, that isn't the way that I want to discipline my children. You just talked about your dad and how you never got to 3. For whatever reason, that probably was effective to you for you. And that particular case doesn't involve any kind of physical activity. But the other thing for me, just being a black dude, to tell you the truth, I think there's some connotations from going all the way back to the slavery times that I don't like, and I don't like hitting my kid in that way. And some people might think I'm reading too much into it, but that is not something that I am or Kelsey are going to participate in. He might get a pat on the butt, like a little one-off here and there. I can't imagine hitting that kid at this point anyway. But from a discipline standpoint, we are definitely going to approach that a different way than I had growing up. And I wasn't around here getting beat, but I definitely remember the whoopings that I got, and it isn't something that I necessarily want Bryce to have as well.
Yeah, I think discipline is a big topic. Growing up, I wasn't. I will fully admit this. I wasn't the greatest little kid. I wasn't getting into crazy trouble or with the law or anything like that outside of the home. I was very respectful outside of the home, but in the home, I talked back a lot. I had anger issues, and I was constantly getting grounded or put in my room or stuff taken away. And I think that I understood my parents were trying to discipline me, but the problem was I think they didn't always understand why I was upset. Like, they just were like, well, life's not fair, or this is because I said so. And I think sometimes you need to make sure if your kid's in trouble that they genuinely understand why they're in trouble. Now, sometimes it's just you need to listen to mom and dad, and I get that. But I think that just the way they went around it sometimes, like, I swear my mom grounded me for like 2 years one time, like, but it didn't mean anything because it was always just like, because to me I was like, okay, you're going to be, because it's not plausible. And I was smart enough to realize that, like, you're not going to really ground me for 2 years. Right. So at some point I had already reached my max. I'm going to get my money's worth when arguing with you. Right? That was the kid I was. Like, I was that kid, you know. My siblings are all probably like, this guy just needs to stop. But so that is a big one. I think for sure is discipline, like you kind of mentioned. One thing that I will take from my parents that I think they both did a good job of is, and I notice it in other people our age, Brandon, but my parents did a great job teaching me finances. And they gave us allowances when we were younger, but like made us responsible for spending that money. Like they were like, okay, you're responsible for buying these things for yourself or for these gifts. So it wasn't like just to give us money. It was to give us money because you're going to need this money to buy these things that you're going to need or want. And that was important. And then even as I got older, I remember being 16, my mom got a credit card where she was on it and I was on it, but I was only allowed to use it for gas or if I was going out to grab something for like the house, like, hey, go get some milk for the home. And then I paid it off every month, and she told me the importance of that, building my credit. My dad, we always joked that I was like 10 years old, and my dad would be like, want to go out for ice cream? And be like, yeah. And he'd be like, do you have any money? And this is literally what my dad would say. Like, but he always taught us like it was important to have money and to save money. And now people joke that they nicknamed me Squeak because they said that's what my wallet sounds like. But I'm good with money, and I know how to save, and I know how to spend. And even through college, they always taught me, you know, to work hard for what I had and how to spend that stuff. I remember being 14, Brandon, and I wanted an MP3 player, not an iPod. It was a Dell DJ. That was the hottest one because I researched it. Yeah, it was the best one.
The Microsoft Zoom was the
No, that was flashy. Dell DJ had the best guts. I researched it, trust me. So I wanted it. I was 14 years old. I go, Mom, I want this so bad. And she goes, great, get a job. And I kind of like was like, well, she's like, just get a job. And I don't think she thought I would, but I did. I went, got one of those job permits because I wasn't old enough. And then I started working, saved up, and bought that Dell DJ, and I freaking love that thing. I was on LimeWire downloading 3 songs over 10 hours.
Oh, man, you bringing back memories.
Yeah, I had it all. So that was, but I got a job then, and that's kind of what taught me, you know, again, how to save, how taxes work, what to do with my money.
Yeah, because it wasn't given to you.
Correct, and that's been very, very important. So I think certain things with finances I'll definitely try to teach Peyton, because honestly, will, you know, God forbid something happens, but we're in a position where we should probably be more financially stable and better off than my parents were with me, with Peyton. But I don't want her to just think, oh, I can have whatever I want, or, you know, things will be given to me. I want her to know that she needs to work for things, and if she wants stuff, she's going to have to work hard for it, because the kids that feel like they're given everything, a lot of times are the ones that aren't great with money. And then other kids that never learn that kind of stuff, same thing. They're the ones who haven't saved up a lot. So I don't want that, you know? Does that make sense?
It makes complete sense. It's the balance of it all, really. And I mean, I had the same life lessons. If I always felt like growing up, and my parents are average, I'd say upper middle class family. They do pretty well, but we never had like the latest and greatest game system. I don't know why this always sticks with me, but when like PlayStations were out, I had a hand me down Sega Genesis, and what that taught me, because they didn't just go out and buy it. As soon as I could, I got a paper route. It's the same story as you, and I saved my money up. I actually made pretty good money on that paper route. It was like $250 a month for like a 10.
That ain't bad.
It was great. No, it was great. It was $250 a month. I remember that check every month. But saved up and bought my brother and myself an Xbox. And it's just it's those values that you get from things not being handed to you. And sometimes as parents, I can already almost see it. It may be easy, and you want to see your kid happy, but you have to find the balance between it. And that's something that I think we both are striving to do. One other thing that, I got a few other things technically, but one other thing that was very integral for me was church. And it's not only is it the values that you are instilled in you, but for me, in a very practical sense, like people get nervous, I'd say, either performing in front of people or standing up and presenting things in front of people. That doesn't really affect me in the same way. And a huge part of that is because my entire life, like multiple times a year, I'm standing up in front of a congregation at times as large as 2,000 people, and like basically doing the same thing. I'm presenting, and those, like, you don't think about it in real time, but putting your child in position to do things like that is extremely beneficial going forward. So whether it be that, summer camps, things like that were kind of off the beaten path that my mom had us in. We were in a ton of like school based summer camps where we had to like science camps, and I went to like a speech camp and a mock trial lawyer camp, stuff like that, where I got to get my sports fix off at times, but also she always kept our brains engaged. I think it helped me out a ton.
Yeah, I it's funny you mentioned church. Church is kind of, I have in my notes, but it's more like values in general. My parents did a good job of installing character and good values, I think, into all of us kids, which was very important. You know, treating people the right way, hard work, being respectful, all those things like were ingrained into us. You know, what's right, what's wrong, and I think, you know, like I said, I have 6 siblings, and I'm biased, but I think all of us turned out pretty good, and we all are good people, which I think has a lot to do with our parents, you know, like by example, but also what they were teaching us day in and day out, to just treat people the right way. Like I said, growing up, I mean, we kind of started out being probably, I don't want to say like poor, but lower middle class, and then as I got older, my parents started getting more money and working better jobs and stuff, and we started kind of like becoming more affluent with money and stuff like that. But it wasn't even about that. It was kind of the values were always the same. And but I was moved a few times, and I lived in different areas because my parents were divorced too. And I remember I was always friends with people from different backgrounds, different ethnicities, things like that. And I never thought twice about any of it because my parents always were like, people are just people, and you know, you treat everyone the same. And obviously, if people are jerks, they're jerks. But it didn't. None of it mattered. It didn't matter where they came from. It didn't matter what their size their house was. It didn't matter what they looked like. It didn't matter if they were female or male. I mean, it was just to treat people the right way. So that was a big thing. Was just the core values they installed, and I want to make sure that we instill good values into Peyton, into our future kids as well.
Yeah. My last thing was, and this is more or less just selfishly for me, but sports. And I grew up playing basketball and soccer. I played youth football growing up. And the reason I kind of brought that up is because there is and this is something that we are probably doing differently. But the whole conversation around football and how early do you potentially start your kid playing, this is probably a whole podcast episode in and of itself at some point, Jerry. But it jumped out at me because, like, I remember playing football in the 4th grade, tackle football. I remember getting popped.
Oh yeah,
going up the middle. I remember my head ringing and that's something that there are a lot of sports that we're comfortable with, but we actually have had the conversation of, if Bryce is interested in football, that he needs to wait until high school to start. I don't know. You and I have never actually talked about that. I know you played football at a pretty high level. And
yeah, I played
some pretty good teammates too.
Yeah, I played for a good high school team, but I played since I was little. And honestly, I was one of the smallest guys on the team for a lot of the years. I know that shocks you, Brandon, but
believe it or not, I was not the bigger guy, one of the bigger guys on the team.
I was one of the smallest almost every single time, and but I had a high motor, and so I definitely took some hits. And back then, they weren't teaching, you know, how to hit different. You know, you were leading with your head, and you were.
Oh yeah.
You were
Jacked Up was still on Monday Night Countdown.
Yeah, so I get where you're coming from. I go back and forth on it. I think it's something that, you know, as science develops and there's advancements in football and kind of what my kid is thinking will play a part into it. Like if my kid really wants to play football, you know, depending on his age and kind of where I think he is, it sounds bad, but I think if he's not very skilled and coordinated, I might shy him away from that more, where if I feel like he's a little bit more aware of his physical being, you just protect yourself better because quite honestly, being super small or not being super coordinated can get you hurt. It just can, especially in a sport like football, even hockey. Can be pretty gruesome. But sports is fun, and getting your kids involved in sports or activities, whether it's dance, gymnastics, things like that, are all definitely important. I grew up playing tons of sports, and I think that's important to have a variety too, not be forced to play one sport. My parents did a good job of that, because then you're like, okay, I like this, I don't like that. You don't want to push them one way or another just because you enjoy something or want them to enjoy something. So that's big, and
it teaches discipline at a whole different level.
Correct, and I'm the parent that's like, I'm okay with the coach being tough. I'm okay with, if you're not the best player, not playing. Kids need to learn those lessons. I think that sometimes nowadays everyone's like, well, my kid should play and we shouldn't keep score and everything's you need to learn the tough lessons of playing on a team and what comes with that.
Sports is a perfect microcosm for life.
It really is.
If you're not good at your job, you
Yes.
might not be getting put. You might not.
You're
be
not
put
winning
in the starting lineup. Yeah.
Exactly. No, and then kind of talking about sports, Brandon, my last point is growing up, not to get too into the weeds or anything, but because my parents were divorced and because of some of their choices that they made and kind of their relationship, my dad wasn't around a lot for sporting events and for other events. And that really affected me when I was younger, because I always wanted kind of his approval. It was very, very important for me. And him not being around, messed with me a lot. So it's something that I am going to do everything in my power to make sure that I can go to as many, if not all, sporting events, school events, anything I can do. That's why I want to be in a position that I can be from a work standpoint, to be able to have a job that allows me to do so. And if it doesn't, we are okay financially, where I can move to a different job that will let me, because I know how important that is. Because kids, when they're young, they don't know how much money you have. They don't know what's nice and not nice, but they do know if you're there or not there. And that's what's the most important. You need to be there. And I get if you're at work and you're like, okay, I'm making money to help, put food on the table. And don't get me wrong, that's everything. But if you can all help it, being there for your kids' events, they will remember that. Because I remember my grandpa, being at sporting events, but not my dad almost ever. So that was a big deal to me.
Yeah, that's something that I have to credit my dad, because somehow he was working 60 hours a week. This is the thing that actually, it kind of gets to me, because I look at times at what the schedule that we keep in our current position, and I'm thinking down the line that, like, how we can maneuver to do things like that. Like I remember my dad with his walkie-talkie from work at our youth soccer games. And you don't think about the fact, you brought this up, that as a kid that he doesn't necessarily have to be there, or he might not be there. I don't really. It's almost the exact opposite. I don't remember him not being there, and that's a conversation I had with Kelsey before we had kids about the timing, because it's like that is what I want to be, but I worry at times that work is going to get in the way. And as much as you hope it doesn't, you got to put yourself in a position, like you said, to where it can't, if you can avoid it.
For sure. But like we talked about, Brandon, I think what's important for everyone is understanding that your childhood is going to affect how you parent, but being able to recognize what were the good things, what are the bad things, and what habits you're having that are healthy and which ones maybe aren't. Because sometimes you might be doing some things that you experienced from your childhood, and then you're like, I didn't enjoy these when I was a kid. Maybe I shouldn't be doing the same, but it's normal to you. So just being able to look in the mirror and kind of seeing what you're doing is key, and it will adapt. I'm sure what we think right now might be different as our kids get older, and as we change as parents, as our kids change, and as times change. So being adaptable, but being able to look in the mirror is definitely crucial. Knowing who you are and what skills you have and why you're acting the way you're acting. So,
yep, it means everything.
It does. Why don't I hit you with a dad joke, though, Brandon? I'm trying to remember.
Let's break up. We're a little somber right now.
We are.
Though I'm gonna listen back to this. I thought this was a really good episode, Jerry.
So, Brandon, what do you call an alligator in a vest?
An alligator in a Oh, why do I feel like I heard this? An alligator in a vest. I don't know. What do you call him?
An investigator. Just like you, Brandon. That's full circle. An investigator. How you like that?
What people at home don't know is you've been calling me like inspector/investigator all day.
Exactly.
So I know you didn't have this joke ready this morning.
I didn't. That's some props right there for coming full circle with the joke.
That's pretty
tying
good.
It in.
That's pretty good.
That's a
that was
W.
Chappelle level.
That was a W. I liked it. So Brandon, one thing that we'll talk about more in a couple episodes, but we're trying to, every episode we mention some pieces of dad gear and things that we like or things we've heard about. We're trying to gather all those pieces together and create like an Amazon page where you can just go there, the Dad Jokes like Amazon page, and you can see everything, and that way you can look at what you want, what you don't want. It's kind of like a registry, but just for this podcast. So we're going to release that soon, but something to look forward to, if you will. Also, speaking of that page and other pages, if you haven't liked us on any of our social media pages, please do. It's the Dad Jokes Podcast. Please tell your friends about us. Let us know what you think. We love hearing from each and every single one of you. It's definitely a highlight for us when we hear from people that listen. So, but for Investigator Banks, I am Jerry, and you've been listening to Dad Jokes.